With that, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this hearing today. And I look forward to cooperating with you, not only in this hearing, but in the upcoming Congress on our Earn It bill, on other measures, because you're absolutely right. Change must come to social media. The fact is, we meet today in an unprecedented and precarious moment in American history. Daily, the president shocks our conscience and shakes the very foundations of our democracy using a powerful megaphone, social media. The president has used this megaphone to spread vicious falsehoods in an apparent attempt to overturn the will of voters. Every day, he posts new threats and conspiracy theories about mail-in ballots and voting machines, lies that contradict his own election security officials and his lawyers. He uses this megaphone potentially to block a peaceful transition of power. Now, Mr. Zuckerberg and Mr. Dorsey, you have built terrifying tools of persuasion and manipulation with power far exceeding the robber barons of the last Gilded Age. You have profited hugely by strip mining data about our private lives and promoting hate speech and voter suppression. You have an immense civic and moral responsibility to ensure these instruments of influence do not irreparably harm our country. I recognize the steps, they're really baby steps, that you've taken so far. The destructive, incendiary misinformation is still a scourge on both your platforms and on others. In fact, Google has been given a pass from today's hearing. It's been rewarded by this committee for its timidity, doing even less than you have done to live up to its responsibilities. The recent actions you have taken, in fact, are simply to check the truth of what appears on platforms. Often it is voter suppression and incendiary, malicious misinformation, and you've tried to slow its insidious spread. That's not censorship. That's moral and civic responsibility. Now, I believe, and I hope the chairman agrees, that a series of hearings on big tech is long overdue on antitrust issues, on privacy concerns, and Section 230. I have urged, in fact, a breakup of tech giants because they've misused their bigness and power. Breaking off, for example, WhatsApp and Instagram. Rigorous privacy protection, because consumers should have control over their own data. And indeed, Section 230 reform, meaningful reform, including even possible repeal in large part, because their immunity is way too broad, and victims of their harms deserve a day in court. But this hearing is certainly not the serious proceeding that we need. It may become a political sideshow, a public tar and feathering. My colleagues seem to want to ignore the foreign disinformation campaigns intended to interfere in our democracy and calls for murder of FBI Director Wray and Dr. Fauci. What we've seen here are fighting words and hate speech that certainly deserve no free expression protection. The fact is that the purpose of today's hearing seems as much to bully or browbeat you, Mr. Zuckerberg and Mr. Dorsey, from taking even more responsible action by threatening cuts to Section 230. Censorship is really a misnomer for this hearing. What you've done is to label and to fact check, to avoid amplifying misinformation, and to, in effect, impose those labels to alert people that what they are consuming may misinform them. And Facebook took down ads for Biden in Michigan and the ACLU in Colorado for mistaken information about voting. In short, there was action that affected both sides. I have fought for Section 230 reform for 16 years, from my time as Connecticut's Attorney General, when I took on the scourge of registered sex offenders grooming children on Facebook and MySpace. With Senator Portman, I have led passage of the only successful revision so far to Section 230, the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, known as SESTA. And Chairman Graham and I have authored the only bill to reform Section 230 that is actually moved out of a committee. This section, the Earn It Act, passed this committee unanimously. Change is going to come, no question. Change is on the way, and I intend to bring aggressive and targeted reform to Section 230. But I am not, nor should we be on this committee, interested in being a member of the speech police. There are real harms and real victims here. And in some ways, this hearing is a betrayal of those real harms and the real victims of them. Those harms have been caused by big tech because you have failed your responsibility, as have others in this industry. I want to see real reform that will enable these abuses to be reformed, because your platforms have embraced, abused, and weaponized child predators, violent white supremacists, and human traffickers. And I've heard heart-wrenching stories from the victims. You've set back civil rights protections for Muslim Americans who live in fear of armed militias, organized by private online groups. You have set back consumers and competition, making that kind of antitrust action very, very important. The American public deserves and demands real reform and accountability, national consumer privacy rules, antitrust principles that curb predatory power, and reforms to Section 230 that stop shutting the courthouse door to victims. I look forward to an opportunity for real change, and I think you can meet this moment by putting your power and your money on the right side of history. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. Lot to unpack there.